Part 2 of teaching our children to obey us is make sure we have consequences in place for the times our children disobey us or step outside of what is acceptable and or expected. The consequences have to be creative and uncomfortable enough to encourage our children to choose to obey us and relevant enough for them to remember whenever they think about disobeying again. Choose a consequence that reverses the offense, if at all possible. Think outside of the box. For example, my youngest daughter had written an insulting note about a classmate using the popular curse words when referring to the girl. The teacher intercepted the note and called me to have her read it to me. My response was to have my daughter write a list of 5 good things about this classmate and circulate the note to the same people that she allowed to read the insulting and demeaning note. It goes without saying that it is harmful to our children to impose consequences that are dangerous or abusive to their minds, bodies, or spirits. There is a difference between consequences and punishment. Make sure that the concept of the consequence is closely related to the offense. Also, keep in mind that obedience can take at least 3 forms. Unmistakable disobedience is when our children willfully do not do what we told them to do or purposely do what we told them not to do. Minimal obedience is when our children technically do what we say, but they more or less half do it as if to say, there, it's done, now get off my back. Now, attitudinal disobedience is when our children go to do what we said, but they showcase their displeasure by shuffling off slowly with the head down and lip poked out. Now, we know it's happening because something inside us wants to give them a kick to jumpstart them, or they're walking a little too fast. Sometimes we hear stomping and muttering, and when we want to snatch them back, it's happening. Remember, don't take the disobedience personally. They are only doing what children do. Actually, they're doing what people do, because we parents do it too. In fact, the family conditions that inspired the making of this video are evidence of the fact that we parents, like our children, test our limits and seek the path of least resistance. We have been modeling those methods for our children for at least the last couple of generations. No wonder they act this way. We gave them that example to follow. Part 3. Consistently impose the consequences when our children are disobedient or step outside of what is acceptable or expected at that moment. I'll say it again, at that moment. This is the area where we parents mess up royally and lose credibility with our children if we haven't already done so during the execution of the first 2 parts. We lose credibility with our children because we lie to them. We don't do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. We do not impose the thing we say we will impose if our children do not behave or execute as we instructed. We disobey ourselves. Even during times when our children are clearly defiant and disrespectful on purpose, our responses include pretending we don't see it and therefore don't have to deal with it, making excuses for their behavior. Oh, she's only years old. Oh, he grew up without a father in the home. Oh, they're at-risk youth, etc. Blaming everybody else except our children for our children's behavior. What did the teacher do to provoke my child? As if the teacher is provoking the child by requiring the child to follow the rules. Laughing it off and calling it cute, like when we're told our toddler children are cursing people out. Threatening, often cursing at the child in front of witnesses, but when we get home, do nothing. I'm going to say more about cursing at them later. Spanking them or punishing them because we are angry or embarrassed. The spankings are often abusive and the punishment is in effect until we get over our anger. The problem with these responses, in a nutshell, is that number 1, we the parents are not taking responsibility for our children's behavior. Number 2, We take our children's disobedience personally, as if our children act up just to make us angry. And 3, whether or not we spank or punish, and the severity of it is ruled by how we feel at the time and not according to the offense. Responding in these ways and for these reasons does not teach our children obedience. Instead, we are teaching our children to read and respond to our moods. We're also setting ourselves up to be controlled and manipulated in the process. Our children are critical thinkers. They understand that we are inconsistent and able to be manipulated. And many have decided that they're willing to take a gamble on whether or not we will respond to their inappropriate behavior. After all, the odds are at least 50-50 that they'll get away with it. See now we're encouraging them to gamble. Okay, so our children are not the ones at fault for that. That's on us. In order to teach our children obedience, consequences have to be imposed rain or shine across the board. This point cannot be overemphasized. Now, about cursing at the children. There is absolutely no observable benefit that is gained from calling our children bitches and whores and hoes and motherfuckers and fags, bastards and sluts, calling them cunts and dicks and assholes and threatening to fuck them up and beat the shit out of them and any other use of profanity when attempting to correct their behavior. Are you shocked by the use of the actual curse words? How do you think our children feel? There is, on the other hand, plenty of observable harm that results. The same harm, in fact, that occurs when someone addresses adults that way, especially when that someone is in a position of authority over the other adult. The receiver or the victim is not feeling motivated to address, much less correct their mistake or offense that is the cause of the confrontation. She or he is concentrating on the embarrassing, demoralizing way it was corrected and deciding ways to retaliate. So the lesson is lost. We curse at our children when we're not using profanity also, when calling them things that insult their intelligence or their potential, calling them stuff like stupid, dumb, ignorant, cemetery bound, future criminal, etc. Or when we're insulting their appearance, calling them ugly, fat, big lip, skinny, sloppy, nappy-headed, trifling, black, yellow, white, four-eyed, long neck, looking like your daddy or your mama. Who else are they gonna look like? No, seriously, who else they gonna look like? You get the picture. We all have the ability to curse anyone with anything we say. We can make wearing a solid colored shirt sound degrading and offensive. Look at that black shirt you got on. What's wrong with your ears? It's all in the intent behind the words. People can always feel the intent. And children are people too. Our children feel and think just like we do. It would do us parents well if we were to correct our children in the same way we would want to be corrected when we make a mistake or step out of line. The goal is to correct our children's behavior, not kill their spirits so they grow up and, following our example, kill their children's spirits. There are other strategies, tools, and tips listed in the full-length book, Tapping Our Parental Power, the manual for creating academic and life success for our children. But they mean nothing if we have not taken the time to make sure that our children obey us. If our children do not obey us, their parents, they will not obey anyone else. We can all remember witnessing some rubbernecking little girl or bone-headed little boy saying, "My own mama can't make me, and you can't make me either." That child is telling the absolute truth. Just think about it. And while pondering that point, ask yourself, who wants to be bothered with a child like that? We all know the answer is nobody. No one wants to be subjected to a defiant, hard-headed child. We can continue to delude ourselves into pretending that people should treat all children the same. But the reality is that people do not like people, and children are people too, remember, who make their jobs and lives unpleasant with their disrespectful, destructive, lazy, violent, and uncooperative attitudes and behaviors. The ability to obey will carry a person far in life. A successful academic experience is directly proportionate to a student's ability to follow the directions of obey teachers and professors. However, this is more than just about school. Our children are going to marry someday, and if their unions are going to have any chance at all, our children will have to be in the habit of being disciplined, responsible, accountable, respectful, and their sense of self will have to include their spouses and children. Yes, our children will have children, whether we accept and plan for them or not. Moreover, in order for society to benefit, our children's sense of self will need to extend to encompass the community as well. Now, let's get into the first lesson of obedience a child must learn. This first lesson is often only used, therefore is misused, when parents feel angry and or at their wits' end with their children's behavior. We just talked about how ineffective it is to wait until we're angry to respond to our children. So let's just get to the lesson.